I like the sixth prince.
I like the Empress.
Her Majesty had organized the draft with great fanfare, novelly allowing the candidates to choose their preferred imperial kin. For a moment, the candidates scrambled to name the ones they fancied, hoping Her Majesty would bestow her royal blessing upon them. When it was my turn, I spoke up, feigning hesitation. The one I fancy is somewhat unusual. I hope your Majesty will forgive me. These words instantly piqued the curiosity of everyone present. The Empress said gently,
Go on, let us hear it. What is so different about him? If it is truly unsuitable, I will simply reject it.
I curtsied, swept my gaze toward Princess Yunyang sitting nearby, and smiled faintly. Thank you for your grace, your Majesty. The one I have my eyes on is the young master of Princess Yunyang's manor. The moment the words left my mouth, Commandery Princess Xiao beside me instantly flew into a rage.
Lin Yueyao, you shameless wench. How dare you say such a thing?
Seeing Commandery Princess Xiao's furious reaction, I knew. She had misunderstood, thinking I wanted to steal her beloved Master Xiao. Although he was the son of the princess's consort by his late wife, he was raised in the princess's manor since childhood, and everyone called him the eldest young Master Xiao. Even Princess Yunyang looked astonished, clearly believing that I was after Master Xiao as well. However, the Empress did not know the inside story. She darkened her face and scolded her niece.
Yuexi, you are being too insolent. A royal commandery princess shouting here like this is no different from a common shrew. You have utterly disgraced the royal family.
Realizing her blunder, Commandery Princess Xiao quickly knelt to beg for mercy.
Yuexi forgot her manners. I beg Aunt to forgive me.
The Empress cast a cold glance at her.
Since you know you lost your manners, why don't you apologize to that lady at once?
Commandery Princess Xiao was full of defiance, stubbornly refusing to bow her head to me, and wanting even less to let me marry Master Xiao. Not wanting to cause further trouble, I bowed and said, Never mind. I cannot accept the Commandery Princess's apology.
At least you are sensible.
Feigning ignorance of her smug expression, I blinked my big innocent eyes and looked at her. But why is the Commandery Princess so angry? Could it be that you too have feelings for the second young master, Xiao Yu? As soon as these words were spoken, a dead silence fell over the main hall. Everyone's jaws dropped in shock. Who would have thought that the person I fancied was not the eldest young master, Xiao Lang, but actually the second young master, Xiao Yu? Everyone present thought I had lost my mind. Commandery Princess Xiao's eyes widened like copper bells, her mouth moving faster than her brain.
You're not joking, are you? Have you lost your mind?
It is absolutely true. I have feelings for the second young Master Xiao. Turning my gaze to the dumbfounded Princess Yunyang, who was also the biological mother of the second young master, I offered a gentle and charming smile. I hope your Majesty and the Grand Princess will grant this wish. At this, everyone's jaws nearly hit the floor. Some even gasped aloud. Why were they so shocked? I knew the reason all too well. That second young master, Xiao Yu, was once a man of exceptional grace and talent, possessing brilliant intellect. Since childhood, he had been a legendary prodigy famous throughout the capital. In terms of family background, looks, stature, or literary and martial talents, he was simply perfect without a single flaw. Before the age of 16, Xiao Yu was the noble young master whom the entire capital looked up to. But after the age of 16, the name Xiao Yu became a taboo that everyone avoided like the plague, only because he wrote a petition in blood to remonstrate, scolding his imperial grandfather, the emperor, as a foolish tyrant. This incited the emperor's wrath, and he was thrown directly into the imperial prison, never to rise again. But in my eyes, what was there to fear about being in prison? It is actually better for a man to be in prison. The little calculator in my mind was clicking away. How wonderful it would be to be Xiao Yu's wife. The family is wealthy, and I would have plenty of leisure time. My mother-in-law, Princess Yunyang, also has a gentle temperament. When the time comes, I will give birth to an heir and run the household myself, and I won't even have to serve a husband. Wouldn't this life be much better than being the male lead's pining wife, and even having to sacrifice my own maiden family for him? That kind of miserable fortune is best left for Commandery Princess Sihua to slowly enjoy. The Empress was the first to snap back to her senses. She naturally had an impression of the child, Xiao Yu. She used to greatly appreciate his talent, but ever since he was imprisoned for calling the emperor a tyrant, his name has rarely been mentioned. Even Princess Yunyang kept silent and avoided the subject. However, 2 years have passed since then, and the emperor's attitude towards Xiao Yu hasn't worsened. He is just keeping him locked up, neither caring nor punishing him further, most likely out of consideration for their shared bloodline. The Empress then turned to look at Yunyang.
Xiao Yu is your flesh and blood after all. What do you think of this matter?
Princess Yunyang's heart pounded wildly. She dreamed of her son starting a family, but how could she dare make such a major decision so easily? The crown prince, standing nearby, spoke up at the right moment to ease the tension.
Royal sister,
I see that Xiao Yu is no longer a child. It is rare to come across such a fine match, so there is no harm in them marrying.
As the crown prince, he was practically the deputy ruler and spent years by the emperor's side. So when it came to the emperor's true feelings regarding Xiao Yu, he could guess them to some extent. Hearing this, Princess Yunyang finally felt at ease. She looked at the crown prince with eyes full of gratitude. The empress could not help but sigh with emotion. I didn't expect that the most pleasing beauty today would end up choosing that little devil, Xiao Yu.
Once the marriage is decreed, there is no turning back. You must think this through clearly.
Without a moment's hesitation, my mind is made up, Your Majesty. I will remain faithful to him for the rest of my life. The empress nodded slightly.
Very well then, I shall grant your wish and betroth you to Xiao Yu.
With that, the matter was settled. Only then did Princess Yunyang look closely at her future daughter-in-law. Her eyes filled with scrutiny. Upon closer inspection, just as the empress had said, she was indeed a beautiful young lady. The more she looked, the more pleased she became. Beaming with joy, she took my hand and said,
"Good child. I thank you on behalf of that disappointing Xiao Yu."
I smiled warmly. I also thank your highness for granting my wish. Only Princess Sihua still wore a look as if she had seen a ghost, staring intently at me, as if she was terrified I was playing some kind of trick. That is right. Princess Sihua did not believe for a second that I truly wanted to marry a convict. She assumed I was just using a delaying tactic, so I could continue my secret affair with her beloved Xiao Lang later. So, her eyes darted around, and she turned to accuse me right in front of the empress, insisting that I didn't care for Xiao Yu at all. It is solely to avoid the imperial match. This is the crime of deceiving the sovereign. The empress was taken aback upon hearing this. Although she did not entirely believe Princess Sihua's one-sided words, she did grow suspicious. She immediately decided to detain me and sent people to investigate thoroughly. Princess Yunyang was originally about to lead me out of the palace, but she paused in her tracks at this development. She simply decided to stay behind and keep me company. With a look of concern, she asked, "Your Majesty, what is the matter?"
Is there still something you are uneasy about?
The Empress motioned for us to remain calm. Not long after, the scouts sent to the Marquis of Wuchang's estate to gather information returned to report. This investigation was no small matter. It actually confirmed Princess Sihua's words. I was indeed forced by my family to join the selection, simply because I had set my heart on a poor boy, and my family absolutely refused to agree to it.
What audacity, to dare to lie in the imperial presence. This is a capital offense of deceiving the sovereign.
Your Majesty, please forgive me. That is all ancient history now. Now, I am truly and sincerely devoted to the second young master of the Xiao family. With her hands on her hips, Princess Xihua, pointing at my nose as she scolded me.
Yet, you still dare to quibble. Humph. I was almost fooled by you, you vixen.
Seeing that the situation was turning unfavorable, I steeled my resolve. With determination, I said, "If your Majesty does not believe me, then have your servant carried into the prison in a bridal sedan tonight. Your servant will have absolutely no objections." I thought to myself, I'm actually afraid that a long delay will bring trouble, and that I'll keep being pestered by that hypocritical scumbag Master Xiao. It was absolutely earth-shattering. Everyone present was stunned by my bold declaration.
Lin Yueyao, you are truly a scheming person, refusing to give up until you face the end. Your Majesty, please do not fall for it. This must be another stalling tactic of hers.
The Empress's anger subsided slightly. Although she was too lazy to distinguish truth from falsehood, she was certain that I was not being honest. Thus, with a dark expression, she spoke.
Since you have such resolve, this palace shall grant your wish. Tomorrow night, you shall be wed from the palace, and sent directly to perform the wedding vows with Xiao Yu.
Thank you, Your Majesty, for granting my wish. The weight finally lifted from my chest. The matter was now set in stone. Though Princess Yunyang felt helpless about the situation, she could only rush back to her manor to make preparations. The Empress immediately sent someone to the Marquis of Wuchang's manor to deliver the imperial decree,
announcing that Lin Yueyao was betrothed to Xiao Yu and would be wed from the palace tomorrow.
Yes!
You must also tell the Marquis of Wuchang that this was entirely Lin Yueyao's own idea and that no one forced her.
Commandress Xua gloated as she stared at me, no doubt thinking inside, she must be regretting this to her very bones right now. When my cheap father received the imperial decree and heard that the palace had investigated my background, he immediately guessed why the wedding was being rushed so hastily. He fumed with rage. Yet there was nothing he could do. He could only bite the bullet and prepare the dowry, thinking to send both me and the dowry into the palace palace to ride on the royal family's coattails. To avoid being criticized by others, Princess Yunyang didn't idle either. She quickly sent messengers to the prison to deliver the good news to Xiao Yu.
Yuan Babao, hurry to the prison and inform the second young master that the palace has bestowed a marriage. The bride is the eldest young lady of the Marquis of Wucheng's manor, and she will enter the prison tomorrow to wed him.
The two servants were completely dumbfounded upon hearing this. Getting married, and tomorrow. Good heavens. Gu Yuan and Babao rubbed their hands together in excitement.
He, as you command. We will deliver the good news right away.
They thought to themselves, did second young master offend every single woman in the entire capital? This is absolute madness. Inside the prison cell, the servant tried his best to persuade him.
Second young master, this is an imperial decree. Do you understand what an imperial decree means?
It means a blade is at your neck. You must marry her whether you want to or not.
Xiao Yu glared displeasuredly at the two knuckleheads. He sneered, you make it sound so simple.
Are you two performing a comedy routine for me here? She was the one who chose me. I have no past grudges or recent enmity with her. Why did she plot so meticulously to ruin me? I've already hit rock bottom, and yet there is still a woman fixated on me. Indeed, the world is full of wonders. Besides, a woman who makes such a brain-dead decision must have something seriously wrong with her head. She is definitely not a normal person.
The servants rolled their eyes upon hearing this. Why is the second young master such a blockhead? Could he have gone mad from being locked up in prison for too long? With bitter faces, they tried to persuade him.
Second young master, how is this hurting you? This is clearly heaven looking out for you.
A beautiful woman's favor is as heavy as a mountain. You should just hide under your blanket and laugh yourself to sleep.
The second young master is just an unromantic block of wood. He usually pays no attention to women. Once he gets married and tastes the sweetness, he'll know how good women are.
Xiao Yu waved his hand with a cold face.
No matter how flowery you put it, your master will absolutely not marry. Don't even think about getting me to cooperate.
With a turn of his hand, he slammed the wooden door behind the cell bars shut, putting on a completely stubborn attitude. Unfortunately, the second young master seemed to have forgotten that he is now a prisoner, not the master of this place. Princess Yunyang had already bribed everyone from top to bottom and recorded everything clearly in writing. She was merely asking to hold a wedding in the prison and had no intention of breaking anyone out. After mulling it over, the Minister of Justice found it reasonable too. So with a wave of his hand, he let the princess's people and goods inside. Just like that, led by the prison guards, the crowd swarmed into the prison in grand fashion and set everything up with a loud clatter. They also dropped off a set of bright red wedding robes on their way in. The head nanny ordered,
Yuan Babao, hurry up and help the second young master change and see if the size fits.
Understood.
Having not served his master up close for a long time, Liang Shaoxi rushed forward with excitement. He just wanted to cry out, second young master, you have suffered so much. But as soon as his hands touched him, it was all rock-solid muscle. Before he could even process this, he only heard a furious roar, get lost.
Get out.
The two of them were tossed flying by the second young master like sandbags. He bellowed with a dark face.
Go back and tell my mother that I am not getting married. Even if you tie the bride up and bring her here, it won't work.
With the small statures of Yuan and Babao, how could they possibly be a match for the second young master? They tried flanking him from both sides several times, but they couldn't even touch the corner of his clothes. Having no other choice, they could only run back dejectedly to Princess Yunyang to call for backup, hoping the princess would have some clever trick to subdue this stubborn donkey. Princess Yunyang also had a look of worry on her face. This biological son of hers had a temper like a stone in a latrine, both smelly and hard. Even forcing him wouldn't work. For now, she could only wait until I entered the household before making further plans. This night in the palace was actually quite peaceful. Commandery Princess Xihua probably felt I was already a trapped turtle, unable to escape even with wings, so she finally stopped watching me like a thief. I took the opportunity to swiftly and resolutely deal with that treacherous maid, and also gave a stern warning to the dowry entourage sent by my family. After all, these people would have to follow me to make a living in the princess's manor in the future. Just as dawn was breaking, I left the palace in my bridal crown and gown. It was, after all, a grand wedding bestowed by the Empress. Although it was a bit rushed, the superficial pageantry was made to look very respectable. The bridal sedan chair, accompanied by festive music all the way, entered the princess's manor, except for the lack of guests, which made it feel a bit quiet. None of the ceremonial etiquette was missed. I even performed the wedding bows holding a large rooster, and was immediately sent to the bridal chamber to rest for a while. Princess Yunyang held my hand and sighed.
That rascal Xiao Yu likes to be stroked the right way, and he has a stubborn nature. When you get to the prison, I'm afraid he won't give you a warm welcome.
She looked full of worry, her heart in turmoil. It would have been fine if this marriage were mutually desired, but now that the rascal was absolutely unwilling, she was truly afraid that I would would be disliked and suffer grievances. I, on the other hand, smiled lightheartedly. As the saying goes, a persistent man can win over any woman. The reverse is also true. He won't go so far as to throw me out, blankets and all, will he? Princess Yunyang thought about it and realized she was right. Once the raw rice is cooked into a meal, who cares if he refuses to accept it?
Good child. I thank you on behalf of that worthless Xiao Yu. Accommodating that rascal like this, it really wrongs you so much.
I pursed my lips and smiled, shaking my head gently, but my heart was blooming with joy. Regarding this son of hers, there was so much she didn't know. He is a truly fascinating person. How does this count as being wrong? My wonderful days are still to come. In this damn place of 3 wives and 4 concubines. If I were to marry anyone else, who knows how many years I would have to spend fighting in the inner manor, serving the parents-in-law, then serving the husband, and having to fight wits and courage with concubines. Just thinking about it makes my head buzz. Of course, I could also hold out and not marry, but without a husband's family to back me up, I ultimately wouldn't be able to protect myself. In case some lustful noble targeted me and petitioned for an imperial decree, then my life would be completely finished. It is much better to keep this marriage in name only. To stay safe, I can visit the prison whenever I want, and if I don't want to go, I can just lie around at home. That cheap husband of mine can't control me at all. At this moment, Xiao Yu, who was crouching in prison, suddenly let out an earth-shattering sneeze. He glanced at the red wedding robes that he swore he would never wear, only feeling an inexplicable chill rush straight to his head. He shrank his neck, feeling a chill down his back, muttering to himself in his heart.
Is my wife really going to charge over here? Is his head filled with mush? And that idiot Xiao Lang, doesn't he usually boast of deep love and write cheesy poems? Since he likes her so much, why didn't he dare to play the hero, save the beauty, and snatch the bride on the street?
Don't actually count on him. When Xiao Lang first heard that I was betrothed to his nemesis, he was so furious that he smashed a room full of porcelain on the spot. To avoid suspicion, he could only slink off to a tavern to drown his sorrows. He comes from a humble background and has mediocre talents, yet he grew up constantly in the shadow of Xiao Yu's brilliance. This had become a thorn in Xiao Lang's side that he could never pull out. He had gone through painstaking efforts to set a trap and send Xiao Yu to prison, thinking he could finally trample this favored son into the dirt and ruin him completely. Who would have thought that even now, Xiao Yu would be like a lingering ghost? Despite being reduced to a prisoner, he was still stealing away the goddess closest to Xiao Lang's heart. Xiao Lang completely lost his mind. Meanwhile, Princess Xiwa, who had left the palace in a rush, had changed into the male uniform of the Imperial Academy. She was rushing over without a moment's delay to comfort her classmate who was drowning his sorrows in alcohol. Seeing the man she loved in such a despondent state, Princess Xiwa felt her heart breaking. She stepped closer and called out softly,
Xiao Lang, why are you hiding here all by yourself, drinking your sorrows away?
Huaxi, is that you?
Through his alcohol-induced haze, Xiao Lang saw who it was, and his heart skipped a beat. He knew perfectly well that she was Princess Xiwa, using the alias Huaxi to fool around at the Imperial Academy. Having been classmates at the academy for years, he knew her true identity clearly. Princess Xiwa could hardly conceal her deep affection for him, but so what? Given his family background, even the daughter of a marquis was out of his reach. How could the Grand Prince Rui's mansion ever marry off a princess of noble blood to someone like him? Besides, he coveted her unattainable royal status, but he could not stand her spoiled, overbearing, and foul temper. If he actually married her, he wouldn't be marrying a wife. He would be bringing home a deity to worship. So Xiao Lang feigned ignorance, only shaking his head with a dejected, bitter smile. The woman I love is getting married, but the groom is my second brother. She is the daughter of a marquis, exquisitely beautiful, and she has such a gentle and sweet personality. She is the perfect choice for a primary wife. Someone you couldn't find even if you searched with a lantern. How could Xiao Lang be willing to let me slip through his fingers in order to win me over before? He had constantly praised my beauty in front of Princess Xihua, deliberately provoking the woman's jealousy, hoping to use her to help him win the beauty. Who would have thought Princess Xihua was such a terrible ally? Not only did she fail to help, but she also turned around and sent me right into Xiao Yu's prison. At the thought of this, Xiao Lang was fuming with rage. He abruptly raised his cup and drained it in one gulp.
It seems you really did develop feelings for her.
Princess Xihua stood to the side, her tone laced with a bitter jealousy, yet a strange sense of satisfaction welled up in her heart. At this moment night fell. A grand red bridal sedan chair was swayed and carried into the gloomy prison, stopping directly in front of the groom Xiao Yu's cell. Seeing this wretched environment, the accompanying dowry maids instantly burst into tears out of grievance. My lady's life is too bitter. The esteemed young mistress of the Marquise's manor, reduced to performing her wedding ceremony in a prison cell. At the thought of having to spend the wedding night in this ghostly place later, their faces turned pale with fear. I snapped impatiently, "Shut your mouths. I chose this path myself." Even I, the bride, am not complaining. What are you wailing for? Are you trying to irritate me further? The two maids trembled in fear, dropping to their knees with a thud, shivering all over. Please appease your anger, my lady. We do not dare to make you feel aggrieved. Please do not be angry. I waved my hand and said coldly, enough nonsense. All of you guard the entrance. After saying that, I stood up and stepped out of the bridal sedan. Supported by the wedding mistress, I crossed the threshold into the cell. Xiao Yu was currently cowering behind the bath curtain. Feeling so desperate, he wanted to bang his head against the wall. He believed he had accumulated virtue and done good deeds throughout his life, never having committed any heinous acts. At most, he had uttered a couple of curses, calling his imperial grandfather a foolish ruler. Moreover, that was clearly a righteous act of pleading on behalf of the people. Not a bad deed at all. Why is heaven so blind? Why did it have to send a bride to torture him? The matchmaking dame raised her voice, cheerfully calling out for the groom.
Where are you? Come on out and welcome your bride.
Even if the wedding were held in the palace of hell, she could still liven up the atmosphere. Although Xiao Yu prided himself on being aloof and could scold his own servants mercilessly, he could not bring himself to humiliate a woman in public. With a dark expression, he reluctantly shuffled out from behind the curtain. The matchmaking dame's eyes lit up instantly.
Oh my, this groom is truly as elegant as jade, and exceptionally handsome, but on such a joyous day. How is it that he hasn't even changed into his wedding robes?
Her sharp eyes, like a ruler, measured his broad shoulders and narrow waist up and down. The more she looked, the more she felt his physical appearance was truly unmatched. Xiao Yu squeezed out a dry reply. I didn't have time. In his heart, he hated his own cursed sense of morality. Why couldn't he learn the rascally ways of Xiao Lang? If he could steal his heart, he would have thrown those wedding robes out the door long ago and coldly barked at her to get out. The matchmaking dame did not care about any of that. She turned around and shouted to the outside.
Hurry up, are there any servants out there? Come in and lend a hand to help the groom change into his wedding robes.
Gi Yuan and Ba Bao had long been waiting by the door, eavesdropping. Hearing this, they shouted, "We're here!" and swooshed inside in an instant. The two of them coordinated perfectly. One handed over the clothes, while the other began stripping him. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Xiao Yu was like a wooden post with its soul sucked out, allowing them to handle and manipulate him as they pleased. The matchmaking dame's face creased with smiles. She grabbed Xiao Yu's hand, took my hand as well, and forced our hands together.
Come, groom. The bride is handed over to you today. Although this place is unusual and the wedding is simple, seeing how well matched you two are, your love must be as strong as gold. In the future, you are destined to grow old together in perfect harmony.
With that, she slowly let go, seeing that I was gripping the groom tightly and wouldn't let go.
Now that the ceremony is complete, this old woman won't overstay her welcome. I wish you two a baby soon. Ha ha ha.
As the wooden and iron doors were locked shut, heavy thuds echoed. As if shocked by electricity, Xiao Yu yanked his hand back. He couldn't wait to speak in a cold voice.
I will not go through with this marriage. Go back yourself and make things clear to my mother. Whether you call off the engagement or have her adopt you as a daughter, it is up to you. Just don't drag me into it.
I calmly raised my hand and flipped off the red bridal veil, revealing a beautifully made-up, gorgeous face. There was neither bashfulness nor anger on my face, only a calm expression as I looked at him. Just as well, I don't want to get married either. Why don't we strike a deal? Xiao Yu had already turned to leave, but he paused upon hearing this. Somewhat surprised, he slowly turned around, with a slight frown.
What kind of deal are you talking about?
Anyway, you are stuck in this prison. Whether you get married or not makes no difference to you. But if you don't get married, won't you be letting down the good intentions of our elders? We might as well just get married. And then you give me a child. That way, your mother can have a grandson and enjoy family happiness, saving her from worrying about her rebellious son all day. Xiao Yu was taken aback when he heard this and narrowed his eyes to scrutinize her inquisitively.
It was a waste of those two silly servants, Gi Yuan and Ba Bao, clamoring about our love being as strong as gold.
Hey, this is a good bargain, isn't it? I put my hands on my hips, staring with my bright, almond-shaped eyes, pressing him with a burning gaze. Xiao Yu immediately averted his eyes, put his hands behind his back, and looked highly guarded.
My mother is simple, minded, and easily fooled. Who knows what malicious intent you have? What if you use the child as leverage against Princess Yunyang to stir up trouble in the estate? Who is going to clean up that mess when the time comes, relying on the powerful background of your maiden family?
I let out a scoff, my lips curling into a sneer. Since you know your mother is simple and easily bullied, then why don't you think about how the prince consort and Xiao Lang mistreat her on a daily basis? What kind of vile character those two have? Don't you have any idea in your heart? Xiao Yu was instantly choked up. Her face was deathly pale. I didn't bother to spare his feelings either. That prince consort father of yours, his bias didn't just start yesterday. how miserably your mother has lived these past few years. Do you really not know? All you do is hide here to keep yourself clean. The more I spoke, the angrier I got, my finger almost poking into his face, throwing up my hands. You wash your hands of everything, being selfish and self-serving to the absolute extreme. What was the point of Her Highness giving birth to you? Raising a dog would have been more loyal. Xiao Yu had been pampered since childhood and had never been pointed at and scolded like this before. But this time, surprisingly, he didn't lose his temper. I could see it too. He wasn't actually heartless. At the mention of his mother, his expression visibly changed.
Even you know they are bullying my mother.
His voice was chillingly deep. Ever since you were imprisoned, the princess fell gravely ill, and she still has to take care of your young third brother. Yet that good father of yours immediately had the Earl of Yangsheng's estate send a maternal niece over, under the pretext of helping run the household.
I know that.
Xiao Yu nodded. But do you know that cousin of yours is highly ambitious? She wants to replace her and take complete control of the household. Xiao Yu's gaze was as cold as ice.
What do you mean?
But it will be soon anyway. That Aunt May is already preparing to make her move, and your father is also acting all cozy and intimate with her, a decent girl from the palace, staying at her cousin's house for 2 whole years without leaving. What is she after? Isn't she after that very position? These words struck Xiao Yu's heart like a heavy hammer. His eyes were filled with suppressed rage. And now, do you see what kind of situation your mother and younger brother are in? As a son, he wanted more than anything to protect his family, yet his home had turned into a dragon's pool and a tiger's den. Hearing this, he raised his head and looked at me with suspicion.
Do you actually have a way?
My gaze swept over him shamelessly, full of confidence. As long as you're willing to cooperate, I guarantee I can bring the princess's manor back to life. Being stared at by me like this, Xiao Yu inexplicably felt a shiver run down his spine. In the next second, he hurriedly raised his hands to cover his chest, his face instantly turning red.
What are you looking at? How can you be so shameless?
Don't worry, once I get pregnant, I won't come looking for you anymore. The moment the words left my mouth, I directly reached out to take off my bridal phoenix crown and walked toward the bed. This tossing and turning lasted for most of the night. By the time we finally stopped, that poor bed was already a complete mess. Xiao Yu, a gentleman who usually preached benevolence and morality, looked at the messy bed, his face turning red and white with embarrassment.
Go back. Otherwise the sun will rise.
Suppressing the anger that was about to flare up in his eyes again, he put my clothes back on me, piece by piece. As his fingertips brushed against my skin, both of our hearts skipped a beat. I was so tired my eyelids were heavy, but when I looked up, I met his phoenix eyes, which were clearly full of desire, yet trying hard to play it cool. I felt a secret sense of triumph in my heart. Just you wait. Next time I come, you'll be the one throwing yourself at me. The heavy cell door finally opened. My mates, Guiyuan and Babao, quickly helped me into the sedan chair. Before I could even find my footing, Xiao Yu's incredibly raspy voice drifted over.
Send her back safely.
He cleared his throat, his tone suddenly becoming extremely serious.
In the manner, be smart and assist the second young mistress well. Don't let anyone bully her.
Yes, please rest assured, second young master.
The 2 maids grinned so wide their smiles almost reached their ears. Xiao Yu took one last look at the bridal sedan, as if trying to sever some lingering attachment, and pulled the cell door shut with a loud clang. He locked himself back into that isolated cage. But I knew this man was completely mine now. As the sedan swayed gently, I drifted off to sleep. I slept all the way until we arrived at Princess Yunyang's manor. As soon as I stepped out of the sedan chair, I saw the main hall brightly lit. Princess Yunyang had actually stayed up all night, just waiting there for me. Seeing me step out of the sedan, the high and mighty princess instantly showed a look of surprise and joy in her eyes. Seeing how exhausted I looked, Princess Yunyang felt so sorry for me that she was on the verge of tears.
Quickly support your mistress and get her back to rest.
I didn't stand on ceremony with her, so sleepy that I could only nod like a bowing chicken.
She will stay in Xiao Yu's courtyard. It has always been kept ready and was specially decorated again today.
Princess Yunyang personally led the way, behaving as if I were some fragile, rare treasure.
All right, go fetch hot water and attend to your mistress carefully.
Only after I was fully settled did Princess Yunyang reluctantly leave. Before leaving, she lovingly urged me to rest well.
We will talk about other matters tomorrow, and you don't need to wake up early tomorrow.
As if afraid I might back out, Princess Yunyang added, "Thank you for your consideration, Your Highness." The moment the princess stepped out the door, several wet nurses gathered around me, their tears falling like water from a broken dam.
Eldest miss, you have truly been wronged. Getting married in a prison cell. This is simply a slap in the face to our marquee mansion.
The two maidservants I had dealt with before also had their eyelids twitching, looking utterly dejected. I coldly watched this group of self-righteous loyal servants, directly interrupting their sob story. Wipe your tears, nurses. The outside world is not the cozy nest of our home. It is a dog battleground. Do not self-pity or feel wrong. And do not pity me either. I am not pitiful. I know exactly what I want. I will only say this once. Those who feel pitiful will forever be waiting for someone else to redeem them. If you want to be strong, the first step is to rid yourselves of that cheap sense of grievance. Pies do not fall from the sky. Who are you crying for? The wet nurses were stunned. They could not understand how the prestigious eldest miss of the Marquis mansion, marrying into a prison, could not count as being wrong. Looking at their dull expressions, I only asked in return, is self-pity of any use? The entire hall fell dead silent. Fortunately, one quick-witted nurse finally came to her senses. As she attended to my bath, she translated my words for the others.
What the eldest miss means is, since we have chosen the second young master, we must live our lives with our backs straight. If we wear a victim's bitter face all day long, it will only make us a laughingstock to others, pleasing no one.
Though she had not fully grasped my core message, she had at least scratched the surface. The truth was actually very simple. Princess Yunyang was grateful for my choice. That was a matter of affection. But if we used that affection to act spoiled and demanding, that would be foolish. Sitting in the bathtub and let out a comfortable sigh. From now on, address me as the second young mistress. You are all trusted veterans trained by my mother. How to behave in the princess's manner. I shouldn't need to teach you, right? Everyone's heart skipped a beat, and they quickly complied. I slept like a log that night. It wasn't until the sun was high in the sky the next day that I leisurely got up to dress and do my makeup. Once I had eaten and drunk my fill, Princess Yunyang, beaming with smiles, prepared the tea ceremony. However, on the other side of the manor, someone was about to go mad with rage. Xiao Lang was throwing a massive tantrum in his courtyard, smashing the room's furnishings to pieces.
How do you do your job? How dare you serve tea this hot? Are you trying to scald me to death?
The maid knelt on the floor, trembling with fear. Young master, please spare my life. This is the exact same temperature you usually drink.
Useless wretch. How dare you talk back?
Xiao Lang screamed in exasperation, his face contorted in anger. Of course he knew it wasn't the tea's fault. He just had a fire raging in his chest and desperately needed an outlet to vent. Just then, a voice came from outside the door.
What is all this shouting about, Xiao Lang?
This female official, seasoned by years in the imperial palace, wore a stern face that commanded respect without anger.
Since things had come to this, what use is it for you to be indignant? Are you going to cling to it like a nuisance? And throw away the last bit of your dignity as the eldest young master?
Xiao Lang's anger vanished in an instant. He feared this cousin Aunt May, but he also knew she genuinely cared for him. Seeing him back down, Aunt May's tone softened slightly, but still carried a warning.
That lady has already woken up, and the princess is currently preparing the tea ceremony. Pull yourself together, and don't let others make a laughingstock of you.
At the mention of the tea ceremony, Xiao Lang's face turned as black as soot again. He said through gritted teeth,
It is all my fault for not hardening my heart back then and making it a done deal. He must have been forced into this. He has feelings for me.
Listening to this narcissistic man's speech, Aunt May looked utterly helpless.
A real man doesn't have to worry about finding a wife. His feelings for you were not steadfast, so why do you still brood over it?
No, Aunt, you don't understand.
Xiao Lang shook his head, looking absolutely certain.
Her marriage to my second brother was entirely out of helplessness. It was Commandery Princess Xiwa who plotted against us. She only has me in her heart.
Aunt May sneered and threw cold water on his delusions immediately.
So what if she was helpless? She and Xiao Yu have already consummated their marriage, and the marriage certificate has been registered with the Ministry of Revenue. She is now completely and legally Xiao Yu's wife. You are unwilling to accept this, but can you steal her back?
This series of heavy blows finally left Xiao Lang utterly speechless and defeated. Yes, they consummated the marriage. It is registered. She cannot. She is not coming back. He covered his face in pain.
It is because I am too weak.
Aunt May sighed.
Pull yourself together. I will find you someone better in the future.
As for myself, who was seen as a prized catch, there might still be a chance in the future. Of course, she did not say these words out loud. At this moment, the atmosphere in the main hall was bizarre to the extreme. Princess Mingyang was smiling radiantly. The prince consort smiled with reserve, and my 8-year-old brother-in-law, Xiao Zi, had also taken his seat early, looking highly curious. The most awkward part was that Xiao Lang, as the elder stepbrother, sat there with dark circles under his eyes, and Aunt May was also seated upright beside him. The entire room was dead silent. silent. After all, the elder brother once wanted to marry his younger brother's wife. The entire capital knew about this. If my father hadn't looked down on him for being a scholar without any official rank, there was no telling who would be sitting up there right now. Yet, the one who ended up winning the beauty's hand was Xiao Yu, whose sharp tongue had offended the entire capital. In this situation, whoever speaks first will face embarrassment. Just then, that was when I made my entrance, leading a group of maidservants, dressed in my finest attire, and walking with exquisite grace. I walked inside with poise and confidence, a flawless, polite smile, without showing even a single flaw. As I approached, I curtsied gracefully and offered an apologetic smile. My apologies, everyone. Yueyao is late.
We don't blame you. It is our family that has wronged you. Did you sleep well in Xiao Yu's courtyard last night?
I lowered my head slightly, feigning the bashful demeanor of a young maiden. But the words I uttered were a bombshell. I have adored Xiao Yu for many years. Being able to marry him brings me great peace of mind. That is a total shutdown. Since we're breaking things off, I had to cut ties completely, and it serves as a warning to certain people not to long for what doesn't belong to them, and they shouldn't cling to past affection. It is all an act. Sure enough, when Xiao Lang heard these words, his face instantly turned deathly pale, and he clutched his chest, nearly fainting. He couldn't believe that my exchanging gifts with him over the past 2 years, and my eager reciprocation, had all just been an act. Although Princess Yunyang was surprised, she went along with the flow.
After all the twists and turns, it seems you and Xiao Yu are truly destined to be together.
To spare the feelings of the embarrassed father and son, she did not press further. The consort quickly stepped in to smooth things over.
As long as you are at peace, this is your home from now on. Princess, the auspicious hour has arrived. Let us begin the tea ceremony.
Mother, please have some tea.
Good girl, please rise.
Next, it is Master Xiao's turn. As his brother, to drink a cup of entrance tea from his sister-in-law is only right and proper. Holding the teacup, I curtsied and presented it before him. However, 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds passed. It was as if he had been frozen in place. He simply refused to reach out and take it. Those resentful eyes of his stared intently at me, as if silently interrogating me. From the side came a sharp, warning call. It was Auntie May. Xiao Lang shuddered all over, only then realizing he had lost his composure. Looking at him in that state, I knew he regretted it. After all, in terms of looks, I am of the highest tier, and in terms of temperament, I am gentle and sweet. Yet now, I have become someone else's wife. He was probably still burning with jealousy toward his rogue second brother. Xiao Yu must have tasted unparalleled sweetness last night, hadn't he?
Xiao Lang.
Auntie May called out once more. Xiao Lang could only let out a low sigh, reluctantly pulling back that look of abandonment, and took the tea from my hands. This hurdle was considered passed, but the real show was just beginning. I turned my gaze to the side and feigned a look of curiosity. May I ask who this is?
This is Xiao Lang's cousin, Aunt Mei Jing. She previously served as a palace registrar. When she was discharged, it happened to coincide with the princess falling ill, so mother had her come over to lend a hand.
Then Auntie May must be close childhood friends with my mother-in-law. Otherwise, why would she deign to manage the affairs of this inner household? After all, a Dianzheng is a 7th-rank female official. Normally, when they leave the palace, they're in a hurry to find a good husband who would be willing to throw away their lifelong happiness just to waste away several years here for nothing. These words were like a resounding slap in the face. Auntie May's solemn face instantly turned shades of green and white. She was no fool. She could naturally tell I was accusing her of neglecting her proper duties and overstaying her welcome. These words were so biting that even the consort felt embarrassed, although at first she also felt her mother's actions were inappropriate. It has been 2 years now, and she has gotten used to it. Now that I, a trusted confidante, have exposed it, everyone suddenly realized, isn't this obviously delaying her marriage?
Indeed, Cousin May has been wronged.
Princess Yunyang immediately followed up. While trying to smooth things over on the surface, she was probably overjoyed inside. The words she wanted to say but found difficult to express over the past 2 years were finally brought to light by me, her daughter-in-law, today. Seeing that the situation was turning against her, Aunt May was burning with anxiety inside, yet she still had to put on an indifferent and detached front.
I never had any intention of marrying anyway. I must thank Her Highness the Princess for taking me in and giving me a place to stay.
I sneered in my heart, but my tone grew even sweeter. That is not how it is. Cousin May is so capable. Is there any relative closer than a distant cousin? Why would you need to linger in the princess's manor begging for shelter?
What do you mean by that?
My husband had just recovered his composure, but hearing this made him displeased again. Frowning protectively, he said,
Are you trying to drive Cousin May away?
Drive her away. I blinked with an innocent expression. Didn't Cousin May come here? Because Mother was ill. Now that Mother has fully recovered, is Cousin May not planning to leave? Does she intend to live out her retirement in the princess's manor forever? As soon as these words were spoken, the entire room fell into dead silence. The logic made sense, but saying it during the tea-serving ceremony completely tore away any shred of pretense.
Retirement? What nonsense are you talking about? Cousin May is highly capable. Why would she need anyone to support her in retirement?
When he said this, he completely failed to notice that Aunt May's face had already turned as dark as a pot bottom. Only I knew that this woman's refusal to leave had nothing to do with family affection. She had her eyes on my father-in-law, the prince consort Xiao Xin, as a female official of the 7th rank. Remaining unmarried was only to snatch her cousin, Xiao Sun. Unfortunately, his primary wife was a princess, leaving her unable to become even a concubine. This obsession with unrequited love had long since warped her mind, making her wish she could poison Princess Yunyang to death just to take her place. How could I let such a ticking time bomb stay here? Seeing the situation spiral out of control, the prince consort could no longer sit still. He had no choice but to step in and defuse the situation.
Enough. The tea ceremony is what matters. We can discuss Cousin May's personal matters later.
A flicker of disappointment flashed through Princess Yunyang's eyes, but there would be plenty of time for that later.
Lin Yueyao, this is Zi, Xiao Yu's younger brother.
The princess composed herself and warmly introduced the little boy beside her. The 3rd young master, Xiao Zi, is only 8 years old this year. He was as cute as a porcelain doll, with a pair of dark round eyes, looking up at me with admiration.
Zi greets sister-in-law.
The little fellow's voice was crisp, and his eyes were bright. Despite his young age, he was fully aware of the undercurrents surrounding the household. He only regretted that his voice carried no weight, rendering him unable to help his mother. But he could tell that this new sister-in-law had a sharp tongue and was a formidable ally. Zi, I nodded with a smile and handed over the greeting gift I had prepared, speaking in a gentle tone. Good boy, would you like to visit your second brother with me another day? I lowered my head at the porcelain doll, like little boy in front of me.
Sure, sister-in-law.
Xiao Zi nodded vigorously, his eyes instantly turning red. He deeply admired his second brother, who excelled in both scholarly and martial arts. But ever since his second brother fell ill, all of his former playmates had run away. Even his closest cousin, the crown grandson, distanced himself from him. This child has had a bitter time, yet he is so sensible that it breaks one's heart. As soon as the tea presentation ended, the crowd dispersed. Princess Yunyang grabbed my hand and led me straight to her room. On the way, she didn't forget to ask considerately if I was tired.
Are you tired? If you are, go back and rest first.
I just woke up. How could I be tired? This blunt truth amused the princess.
You really are a clever and wonderful girl. I truly like you.
That was only natural, and I liked him too. Just now, in the hall, though she was weak, her heart was on my side. Upon entering the room, the table was already covered with various brocade boxes.
These are all the valuables I packed for Xiao Yu. Now that you've married into the family, I'm handing them all over to you.
Saying this, she took out an account book.
And here is the monthly allowance of the household. We have few family members. Before, it was 100 taels per person. Now that you are here, it will be increased to 200 taels.
200 taels sounded pleasant to the ear, but my mind was spinning fast, and I suddenly asked,
But does that Xiao Lang also get 200 taels? That is only natural. The palm and the back of the hand are both made of flesh, so it wouldn't do to favor one over the other.
Why should that heartless man live a carefree and joyful life using my in-laws' money? Then it is better not to increase it. 100 taels is enough, I answered with absolute certainty. I would rather spend less myself than let Xiao Lang get an extra 100 taels of silver. The princess was stunned, and then she burst out laughing.
You silly girl. Our household expenses are small, so we can well afford an extra 100 taels.
There is really no need. If you want to show me favor, just reward me with some clothes and jewelry now and then. This was glaringly targeted, an undisguised slight. If the princess was a smart woman, she would understand my meaning. Sure enough, she no longer insisted. Instead, as if she had found a kindred spirit, she took my hand and began to vent her grievances.
Auntie May still manages half of the household affairs. Those words you retorted her with today truly spoke to my heart. I have long wanted her to leave, but I just couldn't bring myself to say it for fear of losing face, unless the consort thinks I am cold and unfeeling.
I picked up my teacup and slowly blew away the floating tea leaves, remaining silent. She was only here to help out temporarily anyway. We couldn't keep her here for a lifetime. At the end of the day, this family simply cared too much about keeping up appearances. The consort, Xiao Sun, prided himself on being a gentleman, yet he was indecisive. The princess, on the other hand, had a cowardly disposition, constantly terrified of offending anyone. As a result, it was always their own people who suffered grievances. In comparison, that bastard Xiao Yu was actually better. Though he gave no face to his own family, he certainly never spared any face for outsiders either.
Fortunately, you have married into the family. This is perfect now. With a trusted confidante entering the household, reclaiming the household management rights became a matter of course, and no one could find any fault with it.
Looking at her delighted expression, I couldn't help but want to smile. This mother-in-law of mine was truly easy to please. Having settled the household management rights, she probed again with caution.
Then will you still pursue the matter of Xiao Lang? Do you want your father-in-law to force him to go to the Marquise's manor and apologize?
I saw the anxiety in her eyes. She was afraid of my father, who served as the commander of the military and police office. No, there is no need, since I have married Xiao Yu. This matter is settled. Making a big fuss out of it would instead make it seem as if I am still entangled with him.
Wow.
The princess let out a long sigh of relief, her entire body visibly relaxing. But in the next second, her heart leaped into her throat again. She lowered her voice and asked,
How are you and Xiao Yu getting along? That rascal didn't mistreat you, did he?
She knew her son's temperament all too well. He had been spoiled and put on a pedestal since childhood, supercilious and incredibly arrogant. She didn't know if his 2 years of confinement had changed him at all. I didn't suffer any mistreatment. He is actually doing quite well. His image flashed through my mind, and the corners of my mouth curled up. He looks fierce, but he is actually just a paper tiger. No matter what, he wouldn't bully a weak. Well, this was also thanks to my ability to handle him, but there was no need to tell my mother-in-law that.
That is good, that is good.
The princess patted her chest, completely relieved. The two of us chatted for another 15 minutes before I stood up to take my leave, followed by maids carrying armfuls of gifts. When I reached the door, I paused, recalling the venomous look Auntie May had just given me. I felt it was necessary to warn this sweet but naive mother-in-law of mine. I turned around, my expression serious. Mother, Auntie May refuses to leave. And I'm afraid her intentions aren't simple. It is not money she is after, it is father. You must keep a close eye on her, and never give her a chance to get close to father. After all, in the original novel, this Auntie May actually succeeded. She even got pregnant with his child. What was more interesting was that Xiao Lang and the people from the Count of Yangcheng's estate strongly defended her, forcing my mother-in-law to bite the bullet and accept this disgusting match. As for my father-in-law, who only knew how to play the good guy, he absolved himself of all blame by simply claiming he was a poor judge of character.
Auntie May's target is actually the prince consort.
Princess Yunyang was shocked, clearly stunned by this massive bombshell. She still couldn't quite believe it.
Could there be some misunderstanding?
Misunderstanding? I smirked in my heart. I decided to add more fuel to the fire. How would I dare to talk nonsense about this? Father-in-law must have noticed it long ago. If you don't believe me, just go and ask him. Anyway, I couldn't stand my indecisive father-in-law either. It was the perfect chance to cause some trouble for him.
What he knew about it all along. That Xiao Yu, how dare he play dumb with me?
Mother, please calm down. Have a good talk with father. I'll head back first. Slipping out of the courtyard, I finally felt my body aching all over. Though I claimed I wasn't tired, that bastard Xiao Yu had tossed and turned me all night. Even a body made of iron wouldn't be able to take this. At the same time, over in the imperial prison,
Yuan stayed behind at the manor to keep an eye on things. I brought this for you. These dishes were prepared yesterday for the banquet guests. Although they are leftovers, it is so cold that they haven't spoiled. Please make do with this.
Xiao Yu curled his lip in disgust.
Yesterday's leftovers?
Oh well, they were from his own wedding banquet after all. It would indeed be inappropriate not to have a few bites. He picked up a roasted chicken leg and took a bite, washing it down with Huidiao wine. Babao grinned mischievously beside him.
You have no idea how furious the eldest young master was. He was smashing things in his room to vent his anger.
Hearing that Xiao Lang had suffered a setback, Xiao Yu's mood improved greatly. After taking 2 sips of wine, he asked casually,
How is Qingcha? Did that boy Xiao Lang find trouble with her?
The hatred of having one's wife stolen was something no man could endure. After last night, he knew that feeling all too well. How could Xiao Lang swallow this insult?
Find trouble? Yes, someone did find trouble during the tea serving ceremony.
Xiao Yu slammed the chicken leg down. In that instant, the dark cell seemed to plunge to freezing point. He lifted his eyelids. His gaze was as sharp as a blade. The hostile aura, forged from surviving a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood, frightened Babao so much that he nearly fell to his knees. Babao swallowed hard and quickly explained, it was the second young mistress who picked a fight with someone else. Xiao Yu froze for a moment, then slowly and methodically wiped the grease from the corner of his mouth.
How did she do it? Tell me.
He returned to his usual lazy demeanor and resumed gnawing on the chicken leg. Babao let out a sigh of relief and began to gesticulate excitedly.
The second young mistress is truly formidable. Just the timing of her waking up to offer tea is already unprecedented. She slept all the way until afternoon before waking up. Her Highness the Princess dotes on her daughter-in-law and specifically ordered that she should not be woken up.
Hearing this, Xiao Yu, who was gnawing on the chicken leg, froze in his tracks. He silently turned his face into the shadows. As the culprit who prevented his wife from getting out of bed, this matter was somewhat embarrassing to speak of.
The eldest young master also offered tea. He didn't dare say anything, but his expression was as hideous as if he had swallowed a fly.
Xiao Yu sneered, a hint of mockery flashing in my eyes. Of course he was upset. This marriage was never meant for him in the first place. An esteemed household like the Marquis of Wuchang's estate would never look kindly upon that gloomy eldest young master. But none of that is the main point. The main point is that shameless Auntie May.
That Auntie May was also seated at the main table. How is that proper etiquette? But the consort and her Highness the Princess are too good-tempered to bring themselves to drive her out. She really considers herself half a master.
Xiao Yu did not speak, only taking a slow sip of his wine, his eyes completely cold.
In the end, it was the second young mistress who is truly formidable. She cast her gaze toward the side of the eldest young master and asked aloud who this master was. You should have seen it. Auntie May's face instantly turned as green as a moldy flatbread.
Babao grew more and more excited as he spoke. He vividly reenacted how I questioned Auntie May during the tea ceremony about her retirement plans. In the end, he sighed with lingering excitement.
Second master, don't you agree? If this had been anyone thin-skinned, they would have dashed their brains out against the wall in shame. Only an old hand like Auntie May could manage to keep her composure.
Keep her composure.
Xiao Yu sneered.
That is not keeping her composure. She clearly has much grander designs.
At this very moment, he fully believed my words. This Princess Yunyang's manner seemed flourishing on the surface, but in reality, it was fraught with hidden dangers. Only those two idiots, Guiyuan and Babao, still think that if the sky falls, the princess will hold it up for them. They didn't realize his mother was a paper tiger who would lose her bearings after a few flattering words, while his father was an utterly useless, weak-willed man. At this thought, Xiao Yu slammed down his wine cup, his expression becoming more serious than ever before.
Babao, go back and tell Liyuan that from now on, everyone in the manor is to listen to the second young mistress. If the second young mistress has no opinion, then listen to my mother. Understood?
Babao was taken aback.
That doesn't conform to the rules, does it?
What are you thinking? My parents are both too weak-willed, though he didn't say it out loud. But Lin Yueyao is not weak-willed.
At the same time, at Princess Yunyang's manor, Auntie May was panicking. Only now did she realize that I was dead set on driving her out. If she were driven out now, before she could seal the deal with her cousin, wouldn't she lose everything? While my mother-in-law's attention was fully on me, she decided to make a desperate move. Thus, she resolutely sent someone to invite consort Xiao Xin to her private chamber on the pretext of discussing today's matters. Although Xiao Xun was indecisive, but he also felt it was inappropriate. But on second thought, the matter of his cousin leaving the estate indeed could not be delayed. The sooner, the better. It was better to go and make things clear.
Cousin May, you wish to see me.
It was the first time Xiao Shen had ever stepped into this courtyard, and his entire being resisted it.
Cousin, you've come. Come on in. Let me pour you some tea.
Xiao Xun stood at the doorway and hesitantly peeked inside.
Where are the maids? Just let them serve.
Cousin, you must be joking. There are private matters between us, which would be awkward to discuss in front of servants.
Hearing that they would be a man and a woman alone in a room, Xiao Xun's face instantly changed. He stood there, completely stiff, like a wooden board.
Cousin May, you shouldn't say such things. Everything between us is honorable and proper. What is there that cannot be seen by others?
Seeing how eager he was to distance himself, Aunt May felt a twist of pain in her heart, yet she did not get angry, then shifted his tone and immediately began to play the victim.
You saw it today during the tea ceremony. That new daughter-in-law clearly has no room for me. Cousin, do you also want me to leave?
Xiao Xun avoided her burning gaze, his tone softening slightly.
Yunyao does speak rather directly. I apologize to you on her behalf, but she wasn't wrong either.
He took a deep breath, finally hardening his heart.
You have stayed in this estate for too long. First, it has delayed your marriage prospects. Second, for an unmarried woman to reside in her cousin's home for so long is indeed improper.
I understood then. No matter how you put it, cousin, you still want to drive me away. But why have I been lingering in your estate and refusing to leave? Do you really not know why?
Xiao Xun froze once more. Aunt May approached him step by step, her voice trembling with tears, each word piercing the heart.
Back then, on her deathbed, didn't she hold your hand and say, that once you finished her funeral arrangements, you would marry me as your second wife, so that I, his own cousin, could take care of Xiaolang. Xiao Shun, do you dare swear you didn't agree to that?
The air instantly froze. Xiao Shun closed his eyes in agony. On one side was his promise to his deceased wife, and on the other was his current wife, Princess Yunyang.
Cousin May, this is not fair to me. Yes, I did agree. But I have no romantic feelings for you. At the time, it was only to let her pass away in peace.
So you think you have a clear conscience?
Xiao Sun felt extremely guilty at this moment, just because of a promise to his deceased wife back then. He would rather wrong my sweet, naive mother-in-law all these years, just to tolerate Cousin May in every possible way.
I am naturally ashamed.
Xiao Shun took a deep breath, trying to reason with her.
Do you think I really didn't know my mother's selfish motive in letting you join the household?
Since you knew, why refuse to fulfill my wish?
Cousin May's eyes welled with tears. She reached out pitifully to grab his sleeve. Xiao Shun flinched, as if scalded, and shook her off.
You want me to leave? I can.
Cousin May suddenly sneered, wiped away her tears, and proposed an absolutely mind-boggling condition.
Give me a child.
What?
Xiao Shun's pupils dilated in shock. He stared at this madwoman in utter horror.
As long as I have a child, I will quietly go back to our hometown and spend the rest of my life caring for them. I will never disturb you and the princess again. Otherwise, you will owe Xiaolang's mother for the rest of your life. Xiao Shun, stop pretending. There is no man in the capital more hypocritical than you.
Xiao Shun was dying of shame and anger. He took several steps back.
Cousin, just give me a child. All debts will be settled. Do you really want an innocent person like Princess Yunyang to keep carrying this debt for you?
Shut up. Your demand is too outrageous. It completely disregards all human decency.
Then I will stay at the princess's manor and never leave. Do you have the nerve to kick me out? If you dare, I will go tell Princess Yunyang. Our two families had already arranged our marriage back then. She was the one who used her power to bully others and stole my husband.
You are talking absolute nonsense.
You were willing to marry me. It was that princess who interfered halfway. She is a shameless homewrecker.
Shut up. The princess knew absolutely nothing. Everything was my fault. Back then, I lied to her and said I was unmarried. It had nothing to do with her. If you want to blame someone, blame me.
I don't blame you. Cousin, I beg of you. Give me a child, and I will let your whole family go.
This is impossible.
Xiao Sun desperately tried to push her away.
Then I will go find Princess Yunyang to make it happen. Since I'll end up dead either way, I might as well drag everyone down with me.
Xiao Shun panicked. He quickly reached out to pull her back, trying to stop this crazy woman. With all the pulling and dragging, the two of them became completely entangled. Aunt May seized the opportunity to press herself tightly against his chest. With tears streaming down her face, she looked up at him.
Cousin, do you promise me?
Just as Xiao Sun was about to speak, with a creak, the door opened. Standing outside the door was none other than Princess Yunyang. She stood at the doorway, stunned. In her eyes, her husband was tightly holding his so-called cousin. One was weeping pitifully, and the other looked anxious. No matter how one looked at it, they seemed like a pair of tragic lovers.
What are you doing?
As if struck by electricity, pushed Auntie May away violently, his face filled with panic.
Princess, it is not what you think.
However, the explanation came too late. A massive shockwave struck Princess Yunyang's heart. It turned out everything her daughter-in-law Yueyao said was true. They really did have an affair. In an instant, grievance, anger, and shame rushed to her heart. Princess Yunyang's eyes instantly turned blood red.
Xiao Shun, you have gone too far.
Princess, let me explain.
Xiao Shun was scared out of his wits and quickly rushed over to grab her.
Get out.
Princess Yunyang shook off his hand violently, turned around, and left. Her tears fell like pearls from a broken string. She wept while rushing outside with large strides. If her daughter-in-law hadn't reminded her, she would still be kept in the dark, played for a fool.
Princess, let's go back to the room and I'll explain to you, all right? It is really not what you think. I was just stopping her from making a scene.
Although Princess Yunyang was heartbroken, she still wanted to save face after all. She walked silently toward the main courtyard. Seeing that his wife was willing to return to the room, Xiao Shun breathed a sigh of relief. He knew his spouse too well. She was soft-hearted and easily coaxed.
There is really nothing between Cousin May and me. We just had a dispute earlier. She said she was going to talk nonsense to you, so I stopped her. It was my fault. I didn't expect her to be so extreme. Had I known, I shouldn't have kept her in the manor.
To his surprise, upon hearing these words, Princess Yunyang abruptly stopped her steps. She wiped the tears from her face and turned around.
So you were the one who allowed her to stay in the manor. You knew all along that your cousin was in love with you, didn't you? You knew clearly that I would be unhappy. Yet you still kept her. So all the grievances I suffered over the years were because of your deliberate actions.
Xiao Shun was caught completely off guard, and his entire body froze on the spot.
Quick, find a cloth. But it is indeed my fault. I am the one who owes her.
Shortly after, this man, who had always tried to sugarcoat things, finally did not dare to hide the truth any longer. He poured out that messy, complicated past, poured everything out all at once. At the end, he even vowed and promised.
I really have nothing going on with Cousin May. I really don't like her.
Princess Yunyang was dumbfounded to think there was such an absurd thing as a marriage contract. However, being soft-hearted is a common weakness among women. Princess Yunyang's anger subsided by half, yet she asked the most lethal question.
If today's incident hadn't happened, would you have ever planned to tell me about this? Or would you have kept me in the dark for a lifetime?
Xiao Sun indeed had never thought of coming clean. He had always used this as an excuse, wanting to resolve it in secret.
Xiao Shun. So because of your guilt, you just let her discuss me in front of my face day after day? Only after seeing Yueyao today did I realize that one does not have to wrong oneself. Even Junyao dared to directly make your cousin leave, yet I, Princess Yunyang, have to walk on eggshells around you and entertain your relatives. Why on earth? Why on earth should I live such a wretched life?
All the grievances over the years, her husband's inaction, and her son's imprisonment, every single matter rushed to her heart.
Get out, I don't want to see you for now. Go back to your Yongcheng Count's manor. Your whole family is bullying me.
Xiao Shun's heart trembled violently. He loved the princess, but on one hand was filial piety, and on the other was love. Yet, looking at his wife's resolute eyes, his eyes also welled up with tears.
Xiao Yu, do you think I, the princess, am joking with you? Go right now.
I'm not leaving. I'll stay here and watch over you. You can beat me or scold me. It is all my fault. But I will not leave you.
Princess Yunyang was so angry that her tears kept falling. Yet, this was exactly what worked on her. On one hand, she felt the sweetness, while on the other, she despised herself for being so spineless.
What use is it even if you die? Will that solve all the messy affairs of your family?
Have him pack his things immediately and get out of the manor. I swear to heaven, I will never fail your mother in this life. If blame is to be cast, I will bear it all alone.
Princess Yunyang kept a cold face and spoke no more, but her heart was filled with sorrow. A dignified imperial princess, living like a clinging vine, wrapped around a tree. It was simply a disgrace to the imperial family. Although the main courtyard was turned completely upside down, but I slept exceptionally well and sweet. By the time I opened my eyes, the sky was completely dark. Good news followed right after. That deeply affectionate and righteous Auntie May had already been kicked out of the manor overnight by Xiao Sun. The bad news was, my brainless, cheap husband Xiao Lang actually jumped out to protest the injustice. Word had it that his every word was accusing his elders, saying stuff like one must know how to repay gratitude and shouldn't humiliate Auntie May like this. What an idiot. Did he forget what the surname of this mansion is? This is Princess Yunyang's territory. If I want someone to get lost, do I really need to talk about benevolence and morality with him? But I also know that driving away Auntie May is just the beginning of dealing with Xiao Sun, that misogynistic piece of work. I am the boss around here. Those people from the Count of Yongcheng's manor will definitely not let this go. As for whether Xiao Sun can hold his ground, it will depend on his performance in the days to come. The next morning, I had my breakfast unhurriedly and headed to the main courtyard right on time. As soon as I walked in, I saw Princess Yunyang looking haggard. Even though her rival was already gone, she still looked heavy-hearted and melancholy. Mother, is there something troubling you? I pretended to know nothing and sat down beside her with a smile.
Yueyao, you're here. Have you had breakfast yet?
Yes, I have. You don't look very happy, mother. Princess Yunyang sighed. She didn't treat me as an outsider, and her face was full of lingering fear.
Thanks to your warning that Auntie May indeed had designs on my husband. If I hadn't arrived in time yesterday, who knows what would have happened?
Since it was family scandal, she didn't go into details since she brought it up herself. I seized the opportunity to lower my voice and said conspiratorially, I heard about it too. But fortunately, she has finally been kicked out, hasn't she? Father-in-law still cares about you in his heart. When it comes down to it, he naturally still chose you. These words seemed comforting, but they actually cut deep. As expected, Princess Yunyang was not comforted at all. Instead, her face turned pale with anger, gnashing her teeth.
To think I've been reduced to being compared with that kind of cheap woman. Bah, how pathetic I am. I am his lawful wife, and a noble princess, yet I have suffered such grievance for so many years for nothing.
Seeing that the time was ripe, I quickly feigned a look of panic. Mother, I really didn't mean that. But before she could react, I shifted the topic and dropped a bombshell. Actually, you are not pathetic. You are just too gentle and virtuous. Unlike me, please don't laugh at me when I say this, but in truth, my husband Xiao Yu refused to consummate our marriage with me at first.
There was such a thing? How did he agree to it later?
She knew her bastard son was difficult to deal with and had wondered why the wedding night went so smoothly. I pinched him and scolded him without mercy. Men are just gluttons for punishment. They refuse the easy way and choose the hard way instead. The nicer you are to them, the more they take advantage of you. But if you give them a good beating, they'll behave. Beating. Princess Yunyang's gaze involuntarily drifted to my slender wrists, thinking of her tall, burly son. Her face was filled with disbelief. Not that kind of beating. You misunderstood. My face blushed slightly, and I quickly explained. Anyway, it is about tormenting him. Don't give in to him. Think more about your own happiness. If he dares to make me unhappy, I won't let him have an easy time either. Princess Yunyang seemed to understand, but her worldview was still shaken.
Are you saying that is how Xiao Yu became compliant?
Yes, Xiao Yu was so headstrong. At first, he even told me to get out. So loving him doesn't mean giving in to him. To love him is to keep him in line. If I hadn't been a bit ruthless, how could he ever respect me?
Exactly.
Princess Yunyang slapped her thigh suddenly. So that was it.
I was usually too nice to him, which was why my kindness was taken for weakness.
At this moment, the way she looked at me completely changed, as if she were looking at some grandmaster. To make him fully understand, I decided to go all out. I leaned close to her ear and lowered her voice. A woman who is too submissive is boring. You have to make them love you and hate you at the same time. Simply put, it is the carrot and stick approach. Coax them when they're useful, and tell them to get lost when they aren't. Princess Yunyang listened in a daze, clearly still questioning her entire life. As for me, continued to share more intimate details about Xiao Yu and me. At this, Princess Yunyang fell into deep contemplation. Was she really being too soft? Yongkong Count Estate's retaliation came faster than expected. Early morning, 3 days later, the estate gates had yet to fully open. The old madame brought a crowd of female servants, blocked the gates of the princess's manor. Behind them followed Auntie May, her face twisted with malice. Their weeping shook the heavens as they repeatedly demanded justice, claiming Princess Yunyang was using her power to bully others, forcing away a loyal servant with great merit, and humiliating the honor of the Earl of Yongcheng's manor. When the maid flurriedly came to report this, I was accompanying Princess Yunyang in the backyard, learning flower arrangement. After a few days of training, the princess had already shed some of her weakness and held the flower stem with a firmer grip. Upon hearing the news, she merely looked up calmly.
Let them make a scene. Once they've had enough, someone will naturally clean up the mess.
I nodded, suppressing a laugh. Indeed, she didn't learn those lessons in vain. In the past, she would have panicked and sent someone to invite the consort to handle it. But now, she can actually keep her composure. Just as we were speaking, a sudden familiar sneer came from outside the door, carrying a touch of sharpness from a long-awaited reunion.
Mother is right. There is no reason to let outsiders run wild at our own doorstep.
My heart skipped a beat. Looked up. Xiao Yu was dressed in a moon-white brocade robe, standing tall and straight as a pine tree. Though his face was still somewhat thin from his time in prison, his eyes were incredibly bright. He was actually out of prison.
You are finally back.
Princess Yunyang quickly went to meet him, her voice choking with emotion. Yet she did not lose her composure and cry as she used to. She simply held her son's hand firmly. Xiao Yu's gaze swept past his mother and finally landed on me, a rogue smile curving up the corner of his mouth. He walked up to me in a few steps and reached out, wanting to touch my face, but I raised my hand and slapped it away. You've only just returned, and already you're misbehaving. There is still a commotion at the entrance. Why don't you go and deal with it?
There is no rush.
He leaned down close to my ear, his voice raspy.
Let me first see if my dear wife has missed me.
As soon as those words left his lips, he quietly grabbed my wrist. The warmth of his fingertips sent a slight flush to my ears. In the front hall, the old dowager of the Yongsheng Count's estate sat in the guest seat, slapping the table as she wailed and cursed. Auntie May stood to the side, shedding tears, while Xiao Lang stood awkwardly in the corner, wanting to persuade her but not daring to. His face turned red and white with embarrassment. Surrounded in the center, the prince consort Xiao Xin looked entirely conflicted, yet he no longer tried to smooth things over as he used to. Xiao Yu held my hand as we walked into the front hall, his commanding presence instantly filling the room. The once noisy hall quieted down in an instant. He shielded me behind his back, his gaze sweeping over the old dowager and Auntie May, his tone as cold as ice.
Grandmother, instead of enjoying your golden years at the Count's estate, you bring outsiders here to make trouble. Do you think the Princess Yunyang's estate is an easy target? Or do you think I, Xiao Yu, am easily pushed around?
You unfilial child. It was your wife who drove cousin Mei away, humiliating our Yongcheng Count's estate. Today I demand that the princess give me an explanation. Otherwise, I will file a formal complaint at the palace gates and let the entire capital know that your Princess Yunyang's estate has no room for others.
File a formal complaint. Please go ahead, old dowager. It is the perfect opportunity to let His Majesty judge who is in the right. As an unmarried woman, Aunt May overstayed her welcome at her cousin's estate for 2 years, coveting her brother-in-law, and even plotting to harm the princess to seize power and control the household. If these matters reach the palace, do you think His Majesty will punish the princess? Or punish the Yongcheng Count's estate for failing to raise a proper daughter? I raised my hand and signaled a maid to hand over a stack of papers. These are the proofs that Auntie May secretly bribed the estate servants, attempting to lace the princess's medicinal broth. And there are letters of her colluding with outside men, intending to sell off the princess's manor's assets. Would the old lady care to take a look? Aunt May's face instantly turned deathly pale. With a thud, she fell to her knees.
I didn't. You forged it. It is a forgery.
This was left behind when you snuck into my study back then, attempting to steal my father's official letters. It has your personal seal on it. Do you dare say it isn't yours?
That jade pendant was custom made by the Yongcheng Count's manor, and Aunt May had worn it close to her body for many years. Everyone recognized it at a glance. The old lady looked at the jade pendant, and then at Aunt May's panicked expression. How could she not understand by now? She glared fiercely at Aunt May, her chest heaving violently, yet she could no longer say a single word demanding justice. At this moment, Xiao Lang also became completely sober. It turned out that the grand aunt he had been defending all along actually possessed such a viperous heart. He took a staggering step back, his face filled with utter disappointment. He muttered in a low voice, "Enough." The old lady suddenly raised her hand to cut him off. It is I who failed to teach my daughter properly.
I admit defeat regarding today's matter. I will take Mei Jing with me. From this day forward, she is never allowed to set foot in the princess's manor again.
With that, she yanked Aunt May up fiercely, and they left in utter disgrace. Xiao Lang stood on the spot, his whole body stiff. Xiao Yu walked forward, patted his shoulder, and said in a calm tone,
You have always been easily swayed and easily manipulated by others, but fortunately, your nature is not bad. From now on, keep to your place and look after your own courtyard. The princess's manor will not mistreat you, but if you dare to be muddled again, do not blame me for refusing to recognize you as my elder brother.
Xiao Lang lowered his head, and only after a long while did he reply in a low voice, I understand. Afterward, he indeed restrained his temperament, devoted himself to his studies, and no longer participated in the disputes of the inner household. A few years later, he passed the imperial examinations and was posted elsewhere as an official, which could be considered a good ending for him. After the storm settled, Xiao Yu's name was cleared from his previous wrongful imprisonment. Not only was he restored to his original post, but he was also exceptionally promoted by His Majesty, showing a highly promising future. Through this incident, Xiao Xun, the princess's husband, finally came to fully realize the trouble caused by his own indecisiveness. He showed ever-growing respect to Princess Yunyang, consulting her on everything, and never daring to indulge his relatives in secret again. The affection between the husband and wife actually grew even deeper than during their youth. Princess Yunyang indeed put what she learned into practice, occasionally keeping her husband under her thumb. Though she wasn't quite as fierce as me, she still earned both Xiao Xun's love and respect. The household was no longer as stifling as before. The young master, Xiao Ziyi, became increasingly attached to me. He followed me every day to study and learn characters, and would occasionally mimic my ways to discipline the servants. At his young age, he had already gained quite a bit of confidence. I often took him along to sit in at the academy, or to the military camp to watch Xiao Yu train the troops. The timidity gradually faded from the little guy's eyes, replaced by a touch of spirited courage. Our days were peaceful yet lively. It was just that rascal Xiao Yu who became increasingly bolder. At night, as I leaned on the couch flipping through a book, he suddenly hugged me from behind, resting his chin in the crook of my shoulder.
My lady, I'm tired from training the troops today. Give me a massage. Do it yourself. Can't you see I'm reading?
He wouldn't back down, gently tickling my waist with his fingers.
You weren't like this before, my lady. In prison, you even threw yourself into my arms. Now you find me a nuisance.
I slapped his hand away with a backhand, turned around to glare at him. Xiao Yu, are your bones itching for a beating again? Do you want me to call you worse than a dog again? Instead of getting angry, he laughed and held me tightly, his eyes full of adoration.
Call me whatever you want, as long as my lady is willing to pay attention to me.
As he spoke, he leaned down and kissed my forehead.
I used to always think that self-cultivation, regulating the family, Governing the state and bringing peace to the world was the only right path. Only after meeting you did I realize that having you at home is what truly makes it complete.
My heart warmed. I put down my book and wrapped my arms around his waist. Outside the window, the moonlight was bright and clear, spilling onto the couch and illuminating our clasped hands with perfect clarity. A few days later, a banquet was held in the palace. Princess Yunyang attended with her husband. With her upright posture and calm, poised demeanor, there was no longer any trace of her former weakness. During the banquet, someone brought up past events. She smiled faintly.
I used to always fear offending people and ended up letting myself suffer. Only now do I understand that as a woman, one does not have to compromise on everything. Protecting your own family and living life to the fullest is what matters most.
Sitting beside Xiao Yu, I watched the change in my mother-in-law, then looked at the gentle-eyed man next to me. A smile curled upon my lips. This Princess Yunyang manor used to be a dragon's den and tiger's lair, but now it is my safe haven. Xiao Yu squeezed my hand. The pressure of his fingertips seemed like a promise, and also like deep affection. By the time the banquet ended, it was already late into the night. Xiao Yu held my hand as we walked along the palace path. The moonlight spilled over us, stretching our shadows long.
My lady, for the rest of our lives, I will protect you and protect Mother and Z. I will never let anyone bully you again.
I looked up at him. The starlit sky reflected in my eyes. I smiled and raised an eyebrow. I should be the one saying those words, but considering you've behaved well, I will allow you to touch me occasionally in the future. He let out a low chuckle, picked me up in his arms, and walked with light steps.
Then I shall not stand on ceremony.
A gentle night breeze blew, carrying the scent of flowers. The lanterns along the palace path flickered, reflecting the figures of the two embracing. I used to think that marriage was merely to find a backer, to keep myself safe. Yet I never expected that in this lifetime I would meet someone willing to let me manage him, and also willing to risk everything to protect me. What does it matter if the jade is shattered? As long as our hearts are together, we will eventually find complete harmony and fulfillment. Year after year,